Okay, so we're finally discussing Deadbeat, which is book 7 in the Dresden Files. This book did so much. I mean, these books are always really packed. These books always are really well paced in that there's something constantly happening. But this book I don't know how he packed so much into these pages. So because it's so full of major events, incredible character growth, character explorations, as well as some pretty big world implications, I'm just going to hit on some of the biggest scenes for me, some of the most important or impactful things that happened. I did read this, I finished reading this like 5 days ago. I just didn't have time to film the review before we went out of town. So not everything is fresh on my mind, but I think we'll do fine. So the book starts out with Thomas having a rotating door of women coming in and out of Harry's house. Great start to their relationship. I wasn't really sure how I felt about Thomas at the beginning. I wasn't sure how I felt about Thomas in the last book. I think that the moral implications are really, at least in the last book, were very complicated. Thomas can't help the nature of what he is, but also the nature of what he is skeevy through human eyes. To include Dresden, like he feels the same way. He is not about the vampires and doesn't appreciate how often people are manipulated, brainwashed, all of that. Used is a great word for how the vampires treat those that they drink from. But again, Thomas can't exactly help the nature of what he is either. So it was just complicated. And I came out of the last book thinking, I don't know how I feel about Thomas. I don't really know. I need to learn more before I can process how I would moralize this character or how I would judge him morally. And in this book, boy, did we get exactly that. I think from the start of this series, there's been a big emphasis on the fact that Harry doesn't have any family left, and that is something that really haunts him. That's something that really hurts him, the loss of his mother, the fact that he it doesn't seem like he had a great childhood. I don't remember what book it was brought up. His history with his late wife and how they were raised in this like wizard training something that's only been touched on at this point in the series that hasn't actually been explored. So there's a lot of complicated things about Harry's history, and that hangs over him. So we've really been built up to this point to the fact that that's a sore for him. That's something that really hurts, that he doesn't have any familial relationships left. So having Thomas enter the scene in this book and it not just be this complicated, like Harry doesn't morally agree with him, but actually we get to explore Thomas a little bit more and the implications of how strong this thirst is and how much he has to fight to just drink a little. And building up their and building up their relationship, their brotherhood, was brilliantly done and so satisfying for the reader, because we've been craving for Harry to have that familial satisfaction, and we finally got it in this book. It was so good. Then Murphy, who's not in this book, she was kind of removed, and I think that she was removed for kind of lackluster reasons, like, hey, I have needs, so I'm gonna go off with this guy, probably not the best guy for me to choose, but he's available, so bye. I realized that the point was to kind of further emphasize, which again has been built up for books, that Murphy is probably going to be our next love interest. This is something, so from early books, books 1 or 2, one of them I said on my Discord where I chat about these books as I read them, I said like, okay, so Murphy's it, right? She's endgame. And I think the main reason that I saw that was just because Harry, the way his internal dialogue about women is usually very sexual. It's usually talking about legs, skin, breast, tip of breast. For some reason, we don't use the word nipple in this book. It's usually very, any woman that walks into a scene He's not just attracted to her, he needs to describe her in a very sexual manner. And that's just not the treatment that Murphy has gotten. She's gotten a more delicate description. She's attractive, that's noted, but he doesn't hyperfixate on her breasts and her legs like he does other women. So because she has gotten a more delicate treatment, like even her earlobes were described as vulnerable one time, which like, what even is that? Butcher, why do you describe people the way you do? Whatever. Because the way Harry is attracted to her has come off as more respectful than how he internally describes other women. It's just always kind of seemed like she was going to be endgame to me, but then Susan came onto the scene and I surrendered that. And I was like, okay, Susan seems cool. I like Susan. Why not? Let's have Susan as the love interest. Let's keep Harry and Murphy platonic. But in the last book, their friendship definitely got built up as something more. Seeing her in a dress affected Harry, getting to meet her family and getting their approval. Then we finally put Murphy into a dumb laser situation where she had to take off her pants in order to have enough room to get through a laser. So then Harry noticed, hey, that's a butt. Turns out Murphy's hot. So we finally get the sexual attraction as well as kind of developing more of an emotional connection beyond just friends and colleagues. So anyway, that's also been built up. And then in this book, we have Murphy going off on this little sexual vacation, which he is super jealous about. And she seems to want him to tell her not to go. He's like, she says, is there any reason I shouldn't go? And he's like, no. But also maybe don't. So I'm sure more is gonna come of that in future books as well. I reckon they're getting together. I could be wrong. Bob actually got built up quite a bit more in this book as well, getting to learn about his previous owner, master, controller. I don't really know exactly what the dynamic is between who is currently in control of Bob. But anyway, learning more about his backstory in that previous really awful situation that he was in I didn't expect to ever have any sort of compassion for Bob. I didn't expect to ever, he was always just the pervy spirit that lives in a skull. I never expected to actually get a moment of sincere vulnerability from him. And I said this in my reading vlog when I was talking spoiler free, but I personally don't tend to enjoy first-person narrative, but I do think that Butcher utilizes that first-person perspective so well in these books, and that when we get these scenes of emotional vulnerability from Bob or from Thomas or from Butters or from Harry himself, a big part of the impact of those scenes is in how Harry responds. It's in Harry's emotional reaction because Harry is such a compassionate person, and getting the very well written emotions of the scene itself, but then also getting to process those emotions alongside Harry. It's just so well done. And it makes me so extra attached to all of the emotional beats in these in this series. So Marva blackmails Harry into the plot so that he can protect Murphy, because that's the blackmail tool being used. He picks up a Butters along the way who's going to be attacked by a necromancer, and he meets a Sheila at a bookstore when he's looking for a book. Oh, and Lashiel is still in the coin that Harry has had for a couple of books. And okay, so anyway, so as far as Harry being manipulated every time, poor kid, being manipulated into having to complete this task and searching for the information in the book, having Sheila with her photographic memory be able to recite it so that he can handle everything before Halloween, also being attacked by zombies, also having Butters as his newest companion who is very fearful but very brave. The plot was action-packed and so fun, and I called the book bonkers pretty early on when Harry's getting attacked by zombies and like so many crazy things are happening, and a friend laughed at me when I called it bonkers and she was like, just keep reading. But anyway, the whole, as we're working through the plot, it was so much fun, but it was the emotional beats that I think really made this book shine even more, between him getting to know Thomas better and them building a really solid relationship as brothers. I loved the scene when they went running together and Harry and Thomas got to talk a little bit. Thomas got frustrated and Harry challenged him and he was like, just talk to me. Just explain this to me. Tell me more about, you know, this thirst that you have. And Thomas challenged him and he said, okay, well, we'll race. And at the end of the race, I'll explain this thirst to you. So they run. And I thought it was brilliant that on this run, there's it's called the runner's high, which I've never experienced. Running sucks. But we get that thrill, we get that excitement, we get that high of him running and just really getting into the zone. And it's described as the way Harry processes it is like being a child. It's sprinting as a kid with all your might and sheer joy with not a care in the world. And I loved that Butcher took the time to describe the run, but not simply as a run, but likening it to childhood. Especially because Harry missed out so much on childhood. Again, I don't know a lot about this yet. We've just gotten little hints. But Harry missed out so much on childhood and he missed out so much on familial relationships. And here he is running with his brother and getting that burst of childhood joy. I thought that was beautiful. But then, of course, he gets to the car, grabs the water, starts guzzling it down, and Thomas bats it out of his hand. And Harry's like, why? And the thirst that Harry's experiencing is really well written. Like, we can feel how parched he is. We can feel how desperate his need for water is. And Thomas is like, that's what it's like. That's how it feels. So well done. What a powerful scene to describe the daily torture that Thomas is feeling just taking a little, just drinking a little to survive, but constantly feeling like he's desperate for more and never being satisfied, never actually feeling like his thirst is quenched, only surviving, but always, like, it's always on his mind. He's always dissatisfied. He's always so thirsty. And then again, it's Harry's response. It's us being able to process with Harry. It's Harry processing what Thomas just said and realizing, how long can you live like that? How long can you go on just taking sips when you're so thirsty that you can't stand it, that it's occupying every space of your mind? How long can you suffer like that? This is exactly what I wanted from this book in regards to exploring more of Thomas so that I can understand his struggle and understand his unique position more, but also the relationship between Harry and Thomas finally having some satisfaction and Harry finally having some satisfaction for his familial relationships. Just top notch. But then you also have the banter. Then you also have the fact that, you know, they kind of have that sibling, I like messing with you, like when Butters is at Harry's apartment and he's like, if we're friends, you should have just told me you were gay. Like, I don't care. And Harry's like, no, that's not. And rather, I don't know why Harry didn't just say, that's my brother. But Thomas, who's like, kisses him on the head, and he's like, it's okay, hun, like leans into it to rile Harry up. I thought was so funny. But then also Harry, like several things that happened, like on Harry's birthday, Thomas made him birthday pancakes. That's so thoughtful. And when Harry was dead tired because he's injured and has been injured for a really long time and he's still fighting and he's still doing so much, which by the way, the injury from the last book carried over into this book and it was brilliantly worked in. And Thomas drugs him so that he can finally get some rest because Harry's not going to take care of himself. So Thomas had to do it for him. And what's a sibling if not the person that'll drug you so you can sleep, right? Every sibling does it, but it's also Butters. What an incredible character who saw, he did the autopsy and he was like, this is humanoid, but not human. And that kind of put a target on his back and he was put in an insane asylum for a minute. And Thomas actually had a really great chat with Harry, really looking out for Harry. He's been looking out for him for more than just this book, but continues to just really care about Harry. And he tells him, he's like, listen, Butters is a liability. We cannot keep carrying him with us. He's a coward. When he was put away for the assessment he made on that autopsy, he got out somehow, didn't he? He gave in. He gave in to the pressure. He changed what the reports said. He's a coward. And Thomas is he's just being realistic. He's looking out for his brother. He cares about Harry. He doesn't want to see him be put in an impossible situation because Butters is afraid. And he wants, and there was another scene too when Butters was grabbed by the zombies and pulled out the window. And Harry's like, no, and he wants to protect him. And Thomas grabs Harry and tells him, listen, he's dead. We have to count him as dead. There's no way he survived that. The zombies are already on him. We have to go. And it's Thomas's rationale makes sense. He has to view certain situations as liabilities. He has to view certain situations as bleakly and just bluntly as possible if he's going to keep himself and Harry alive. But you have Harry's compassion, and there's no way that's going to work out. Harry's not leaving anybody behind, and thankfully Butters didn't die. Anyway, I loved that setup where Thomas was telling Harry that Butters is a coward, so he will leave Harry. And then we do actually get to see that very thing happen. We get to see when Liver Spots, who's actually Cassius, captures Harry and starts torturing him, and Butters flees. Well, Harry told him to. Harry told Butters to run, which... Harry, so sweet. He's always looking out for everybody but him. Anyway, he tells Butters to flee, and he does, but it's to get Mouse, and it's to come back and rescue him. And I loved that payoff of what Thomas was saying, that, you know, we have to cut Butters off. We have to count him as a liability because he's a coward. And it's true. Butters is a coward, but he's also so brave. He also was willing to set aside multiple times, set aside his own well-being, set aside his own fear, and help them and do what he needed to do in every way possible. I loved the scene when Harry, when they got back after they had been battered, and Thomas told Harry, hey, go check on Butters. Thomas, you're aware, you know, you can see what people need. So he told Harry, go check on Butters. And so Harry went over and checked on Butters, and Butters was not doing great. And Harry asked him, hey, can you help me medically? I could use a little bit of fixing up, which Harry probably wouldn't have asked for help. He probably would have just gritted his teeth harder and continued to suffer. But for Butters, he'll ask for help. He let Butters feel useful. He let Butters do what he knew how to do to actually be able to help. And they had such a great heart-to-heart in that scene where Butters was like, I'm just so scared. And Harry's like, me too. This is human. This is natural. And they had that really great heart-to-heart where they got to talk about the fact that, you know, heroes, people like Harry, who's always rushing into the fire, it's not that he's void of fear. It's just that he, you know, he just thinks that this is what he needs to do. And then we see Butters do the exact same thing, where he continues when Harry needed him for his technological support, was it? And he was like, okay, I'd rather just go home and rest and be done with this, but I will do what needs done. And then that scene with Mouse where he ran because Harry told him to, but he came back because he's brave. Just because he's a coward doesn't negate the fact that he's brave too. I just loved it. I loved it so much. And then of course Polka never dies. I love the line. I love how it kept coming back up. I love him shouting it because he has to do the polka tournament. But I also love after it all went down and everybody's bruised and broken and they're all in the back of the Blue Beetle and Butters is just laying there and not talking, and Harry's like, are you okay? And Butters goes, Polka never dies. I love Butters. I love Butters so much. He's such a good character. Oh, we also got the scene from Dad. Harry's dad shows up in a dream and has a beautiful heart-to-heart with him. That scene too was so well written. The emotions in Harry of being able to see his dad again beyond the grave of somehow, and the counsel that he gives him and the connection that they have and how much that means to Harry. The emotions in that scene too just jumped off the page and were so powerful. I'm pretty sure it's not Dad though. I don't think that's Dad. Just seems sus. First of all, that Harry was suspicious. Usually if Harry's suspicious of something, that's Butcher indicating to us that we should be too. So Harry was suspicious. Also, Dad shows up in a dream in a necromancer book. I could be wrong. I don't think it's Dad. Okay, getting back to more plot things. So the Red Council turns out is a much bigger threat than we thought that they were. They are, so we have the Outsiders, which are controlled by wizards. And now the White Council is manipulating, because Harry's always getting manipulated, manipulating Harry into becoming a warden, which he super doesn't want to do, and that super doesn't matter. This plot point is huge for me because you didn't hear me say it, because this is my first spoiler review for Dresden. But on my Discord, I was after the last book, I think it was after the last book, I kind of complained that there's lots of wizards in the world and the world's blowing up, but Harry's the only wizard actually showing up for anything. And I realize wizards are more secluded. They'd rather just go practice their magic, do education, learn, take care of themselves. They don't care about humanity. I get that. But the world's blowing up. So I just feel like we should see another wizard sometimes. And I mean wars, like there's wars and there's a lot of political conflict that I would think wizards would get involved in. That's what I mean by the world's blowing up. Anyway, with Harry now becoming a warden and all the implications that come with that, which I don't know. I'm not seeing into the future. I'm not much of a theorizer. I'm not much of a predictor. But this opens up a lot of opportunity for this world piece expanding. There's so much opportunity for Harry now getting a lot more involved with other people in the White Council more closely, as well as potentially we're going to see more wizards. Maybe. Anyway, I'm really excited about this plot point. Another plot point that I was so excited about is the twist, the reveal that Sheila was Lashiel. Sheila was Lashiel the whole time. And that scene was so good when Harry goes in and he sees Sheila, and they've already kind of had a little bit of making out. And, you know, in previous scenes, I don't think they kissed in that scene. Maybe they did. I don't remember. Whatever. They've had some romantic connections. And, anyway, he's in there, and then Butters shows up. He walks in and he's like, "What you doing, Harry?" And he's like, I'm talking to Susan. Nope, her name is Sheila. And Butters just kind of, and that makes Harry pay closer attention. That makes him look a little bit harder. And then like the walls kind of dissolve and he realizes he's in a warehouse and Sheila's not actually Sheila. And the whole time she's been Sheila. And then the rationale when Harry's like, you can't do this. You can't play with me like this. Like, poor Harry. Poor Harry. He had his wife who he was in love with, who then died. Shocker, she's not dead. So he's no longer with wife. He's alone for a long time. Finally falls in love again. She turns into a vampire. Shucks, she has to go run away. He's been alone for a really long time again and really just been suffering in his romantic angst. And now he finally finds someone again in Sheila that maybe won't be forever, but at least it's something. And she's Lashiel. She's the coin demon thing. And when Harry is like, poor guy, when he's like, why? Like, why'd you have to do it? And she's like, I've been alone for a long time, which is really funny because Harry's romantic history has also been rough, has also been very sparse, and he can understand loneliness. And he's like, yeah, I get it, but like also you really played with my emotions. You could have not done that. And she's like, I don't really care. Like, I've been alone for a super duper long time and I don't care. So mean. It was such a good reveal. It was such a good twist. Did not see it coming. Didn't suspect Sheila in the slightest. I just thought she was like a little side tangent for Harry while Murphy is having her side tangent. But no, it was Lashiel just manipulating the heck out of the guy. And poor Harry. Poor Harry. What a great twist. What an excellent twist. I already mentioned Liverspot's twist also being Cassius from previous books. But there was also the reveal of Sue. Ah! Oh my goodness. Ah! Sue. Okay. Again, didn't suspect it. It's funny. My friend, again, when I was talking to her about the book, she was like, Sue was mentioned so much at the beginning of the book. Like, she was described so much. These bones that are actually legit and there's no manufactured parts. And also, let's bring up Sue again. And hey, let's mention Sue again. And I was like, she's a dinosaur. Why wouldn't we talk about her? Of course we're going to talk about Sue Lutz. She's a good girl. Which, if you don't know me, I love dinosaurs. I have dino stickers on the back of my laptop. I have a Triceratops pin on my hiking backpack. I have a Stegosaurus purse that I unironically use. I mean, I know I'm not unique. Everyone loves dinosaurs, but I love dinosaurs. So when Sue is just described and described and described, I'm like, yeah, I want to hear more about Sue too. I love her. And we got the thing out of her skull. I'm like, there, okay, good. That's why she's here. But no, she's here to be animated because Harry finally uses Lashiel, which he had the hellfire thing, but now he actually works with her to use necromancy. Oh my goodness, Harry. He's always being forced. He's always being put into positions where he has to push boundaries that he never wanted to push. So now he's working with Lashiel to use necromancy. And Dark Harry comes out of nowhere and he's like, hey, we should work with Lashiel. Pro tip, Harry. If something called Dark Harry shows up and starts trying to convince you to do something, never listen. Never listen to Dark Harry. It seems really cut and dry. Maybe you'll learn. It's a bad idea. Unless the result is that you get to ride a dinosaur. So the whole scene with Harry riding Sue, this animated dinosaur bones or zombie-ish dinosaur, riding Sue to fight zombies, chomping them up and like going down the street. The best scene of all the Dresden scenes. So many emotional scenes. So many really crazy action scenes. So much that I've enjoyed about this series. So many great characters that I've loved in this series. This one was my favorite. Harry got to ride a zombie dinosaur to fight more zombies. You can't top that. You can't, like, let's end the series here. We've hit the peak. It's over. We're done now. I skipped over the fact that we have, like, necromancers trying to do the ritual to become a mirror god, and there was the Elric, or Elking King, that Harry ended up summoning with the help of the cloaked figures, and there were other wardens. Anyway, this whole section of the book was brilliant, and I loved every second of it. I will admit that the conclusion with Marvel was a little bit underwhelming. Marvel was built up really well in this book, and I was really excited. But I just feel like the whole, I don't know, letting Marvel off with a warning and just being like, hey, don't do that again, so that Marva can, you know, be an antagonist another day, was a little bit anticlimactic. I thought we were going to do more there, but this book did a lot, so I'm not going to complain too hard about that. The death curse that Harry is left with is very intriguing because I feel like that's basically the worst thing that you could do to Harry, someone who, as we've talked about quite a bit in this review, someone who really laments how lonely he's been. He's had a rough romantic life, taken a lot of L's there, and his familial life and seemingly rough upbringing with the school where he met his wife, or the training, or whatever that situation was. Again, I don't know a lot about that yet. We've gotten just a very brief glimpse in one book of that. So with his whole life, he's experienced a lot of loneliness, and there's a lot of wanting there for him to have human connection. And loneliness, dying alone, I feel like is the worst curse you could give to Harry and his personal internal struggles. Like, this is horrible. Now, dying alone, what does that mean? Does that mean that if relationships around him are going to get broken and he's going to be even more isolated when he dies? Does that mean that people that he, like, continuing forward, people that he loves, everyone that he loves is going to die before him and he's going to have to watch, which was already his lot in life a little bit as a wizard, but now that he has Thomas, he at least should have one companion, so are we going to lose Thomas? Or does that just mean that when he gets his death scene at the end of the series, or whenever, I don't know what Butcher has played, when he gets his death scene at the end of his life, that he'll be isolated and he'll just have to, like, no one's gonna be there to like wipe his brow and pat his head and be like, yeah, it's gonna be okay, because, you know, you're dead. I don't know what that means, but it sounds terrible, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna haunt Harry in books to come, so looking forward to that. Okay, that's plenty of talking, I reckon. I know that I skipped over some things, so feel free to chat with me more in the comments about some of your favorite parts of this book, and just don't give me implications of what's to come. Let me just experience it as it goes. But I would love to hear from you if you, I assume you've read the book because the title of the video said spoilers. else. So please let me know what you thought about the book, what you loved. I post videos every Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays on this channel, Mondays and Fridays on the manga channel. I'll see you again soon. Bye.